Hey guys, I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Today I am going to start my fall garden. It's kind of in the third week of August now. It's really time that I needed to get something in the ground. And for our fall garden, we're going to be working mostly on things that you typically grow in the spring. It's going to be things like kale, Brussel sprouts, snap peas. All those kind of things can be grown in the fall, and they can grow really well in the fall. A few things we need to do first though is that this particular bed was the one that I planted the potatoes in. It's also the one that I started with just wood chips. The whole bed was just wood chips, a little bit of leftover compost and soil that I had around, and it composted up really well. And we grew a bunch of potatoes. I didn't actually put together the video for it, but I did shoot some footage, so I'll put that in here so you can take a look at some of those potatoes that we got. So today, the first step, I'm going to go through and prep the bed. We're going to add some amendments to it, just some simple stuff, and then mix it in the soil, water it down really good, and then start planting some stuff from seed. So because this bed was used for potatoes, it's going to have a lot of the nutrients depleted, and we need to add some stuff back to it. And since we're trying to grow leafy greens mostly, we want to add something that's got some nitrogen, because that's going to help the leafy greens grow the most. So over here, I've got some blood meal, and it's got a 1400 rating NPK, and the 14 of course being the nitrogen. So it's a pretty high level of nitrogen in here, and I'm just going to kind of evenly spread this over top of the garden bed as much as I can. And what's nice about organic ingredients is that you usually don't have to worry about putting in too much at a time, but you do have to apply it a little bit more frequently because it will get depleted fast. So we're going to do a little bit of that, and then we're also going to put in some of just a typical general garden soil to help with some of those other ingredients, the P and the K, and that's going to be your phosphorus and potassium. So for this, we just got a nice organic garden tone from Espoma, and we're going to put that in here. That was not product placement, just so you're aware. I actually used the stuff, but I'm also partial to anything that's very similar to it. In fact, let's pull this out, and we'll just do it a little differently. And once we feel like we've got a pretty good coverage, I'm just going to work it in. This is not a huge bed, so I don't really need to pull out any big tools or anything to work. I got these stones in here. I used this plant markers once, and they need moved out. So I'm just going to kind of work that into the top layer of soil as I go. Won't take but a few minutes. Actually pulled up a little baby potato that got left over. That might be tasty. And a few extra weeds I missed. And then we're pretty much ready for planting. Nothing's been growing in this bed since the potatoes were pulled out a few weeks ago. The only thing in here is actually one basil plant. See that basil right there, which is not doing fantastic. I probably need to cut it back and either pull it out or start something new. But we're starting some new stuff. So let's get into that part next. Alright, so the next thing to do is just to water in the amendments that we already put in. Just going to use the garden hose and make sure that we get it all nice and wet. Since we're going to go from seed, we want to put it in where the soil is already a little bit damp and moist. That'll help them germinate. But also too, we've got a bunch of rain coming up in the forecast. So if you can happen to time it so that you've got rain coming, you'll be setting yourself up pretty good, because a lot of what we want to plant needs some moisture to start off at the very beginning. So for planting this year, there's a couple things that we're going to be putting in. And this one we really like. This is a dinosaur kale. It's also called Nero Toscana, or it's a lacinato type of kale. It's really cool looking. It tastes great. You can use it for kale chips or put it in your salads. However you like to do it, that's really good. Another thing, we got to go with some sugar snap peas. And sugar snap peas are just delicious. Our kids love them, so we're going to do those every year. Then there's a few different sort of things that we're going to put in here. This is a Chinese cabbage, or bok choy. It's got several different spellings and pronunciations. And I'm very curious about this one. I might try it. This came from Baker Creek. They give you a free seed packet every time you do something that's not an advertisement. I order from them, I pay them money. But kohlrabi came. I've never actually grown kohlrabi, so I'm very curious how this grows, how it tastes, and what we can use it for. So I might try some of that. But we're definitely going to be using, we're going to put some lettuce in of several different varieties. We'll probably just mix it up and kind of sprinkle it around the main parts of what we put in. So that's what's next. We're going to be starting with the kale and the snap peas. Those are the first two things we're going to go to. Okay guys, let's get started on this part. First, we're going to start with these things, and these are simply what they call tomato cages, but they're no good for tomatoes. Never buy one of these for tomatoes. These I've got, and I use them for snap peas. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of snap pea tower sort of things in here using these tomato cages. I keep calling them tomato cages. We need to change that. They're not tomato cages. They're snap pea cages. So all we're going to do is stick a couple toward the center of the bed. Get them in the ground real good. And then we'll plant our snap peas around them. Pretty simple. Okay? So next we're going to take the snap peas and we're going to just place them around the base of these things. We'll put a couple seeds at the bottom of each one. When I say each one, I mean each spoke area. And we're going to tuck them into the soil. We want to make sure we get a couple things growing on each of these. And what we may end up doing, in fact, let's do a couple extra. We'll do 3. I'll plant one on the inside of each spot. And when you plant snap peas, you can soak them if you want to, but we're going to get a ton of soaking rain this week, so it probably isn't necessary for us. But if you soak it for a 12-hour, 24-hour period and put it in the garden, it may help some germination. So we're going to come over here and do the same on the blue tower. After each of these, after we get all the seeds in the bed, we'll make sure we do a really good watering. Got this tower is skewed a little bit, so let's fix that. There. Better. And these have been around a while. They've been used for this many times before. And if you get extra seed, it's not a big deal. These will grow fairly thickly. They don't compete too badly with each other. So if you get too much in a hole, that's no problem. I'm going to add a couple more, I think, in the middle. And we'll just see what they do. I'd rather have more than not enough. Alright, that should do it for the snap peas. Next up, we're going to do some of the kale and put that in. Now, kale is a brassica, and so a lot of the seeds of kale look the same as, say, a mustard or a cabbage. They all kind of look very similar. They're all small little round seeds, brown in color usually. And so I'm just going to create a spot here in the middle, just a little trench. And I'm going to take these seeds and I'm just going to put them in the trench. And that's the dinosaur kale. It'll be right here in the middle, and I'm going to cover it back up again. And of course we'll water them in thoroughly in a few minutes. I've got this other kale I want to try, which is called Purple Moon. Check that out. So I'm curious to try it. And I think what I'll do for that is I'll put it on this side over here. In these areas right there. Now what's nice about lettuce and kale, greens and stuff like that you grow, is if you plant it too thick, you just eat it when it's immature. You can just kind of thin it out and eat as you go. And there'd be no problem at all with eating that on the dinner table. In fact, it might even be tastier than some of the other kinds. A lot of times baby fruit, say of squash or baby greens, are going to be more tender, maybe a little bit sweeter, maybe even more nutritious. So I'm just going to cover those up We want a little bit of covering, but not too much. And that's really all there is to it. And it's the same technique for a lot of those kind of brassicas. It's really not hard. It's very simple to do. So let's check out and see what they say about the kohlrabi. They say 2 to 4 weeks before autumn frost, harvest when they're 3 inches across. So let's take a look and see how this works. And you know what? The seeds look very similar to the kale right there. So let's plant it similarly. Now over here we're going to do the pak choy. And the pak choy again is another brassica, so it's done exactly the same way as all these others. And I'm just going to do a row over here and we'll see how that goes. Again, the key in most of these things is when you have seeds and they're germinating, you want to make sure that you're keeping them moist. So if it's dry, then make sure that you're watering so it's wet down to about 2 inches in your beds. So these definitely need some more water to be effective. I'll give them a good watering today. But we are supposed to get a bunch of rain over the next several days, which should water this really thoroughly. That's one of the advantages of that. Now, with the lettuce, I'm going to do something a little different here. We've got kale in the middle, we've got kale over there, we've got pak choy right here, and of course we have our snap peas right there in the middle, and the kohlrabi right over here closer to the camera. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to sprinkle the lettuce. This is a tango lettuce, which is kind of a, let's see, it's sort of a romaine butterhead kind of lettuce. So and for this, I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it in the in-between zones. And here in the back where there's a little bit of shade in the morning. And if we get a ton of lettuce, that's great. So we're just kind of over sowing with the lettuce seed. And lost that one. Here we go. You get a lot of seed in a lettuce pack, so I feel comfortable doing this, sprinkling it out. Alright, so with that, we've got about a 4-foot by 8-foot bed that's being planted completely with fall vegetables that we can harvest. And if we want to, later on we can come back and we can cover the bed so that we can harvest a little bit longer. Because what ends up happening is once your freeze starts, your first freeze in the fall, your plants will slow down their growth. And so whatever they are at that maturity point is probably all they're going to feasibly be, unless you provide some sort of cover to keep them growing. A lot of the time they can be a little bit more tasty in that fall period of time too. So that's definitely one reason why gardeners love to grow in the fall. So now let's toss in one more thing, which I forgot to do. I mentioned it earlier, but I hadn't put it in yet. And we're just going to let it kind of compete a little bit. These are Brussels sprouts. And we're going to toss them in a couple of holes here and cover them up. Just have a couple spots of this growing, and as they germinate, we'll separate them out into other locations. We'll use this bed as kind of a seed starter bed to go in other areas of the vegetable garden and create new spots. So now that we've got all that put in, the next step is to water thoroughly. We're going to get a lot of water later, but one thing I've learned over the years is you can never completely count on the weather to do what you need done. So you may as well go ahead and water it in, get it in really good, make sure that they can start the germination process, and then you go from there. So here we go. Let's water. As we listen to the airplane flying overhead, now, a lot of these plants are very susceptible to fall caterpillars. And so for fall caterpillars, I'm going to be using BT, which is a bacteria that is very deadly to them, but harmless to people and pets. So as the caterpillars consume the leaves, they consume the BT, which then poisons them on the inside. So, one tip for you, help get rid of those bugs. And it should work on squash bugs and stink bugs, harlequin bugs, which I've seen a lot of this year. So and that's pretty much it with starting this fall garden. We'll monitor it, we'll keep up with it, keep it watered, and if there's bug problems, we take care of them, of course, with the BT spray. And probably a good thing to keep some of that on hand at all times, because you can use it on your trees, your fruit trees, your vegetable garden plants, a lot of things. Fend off the tomato hornworm with it too. And we'll use these seeds as starter seeds for other beds and go from there. So check back with me. We'll do an update on how this vegetable garden bed for fall is going. And I'm Dave with Growing the Home Garden. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. We'll catch you later.